Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie featuring Ivan Ooze for the Super Nintendo. In the last part we started off the game and we went through Adam, Aisha, and Billy, and now it's time for good old Kimberly to come back. Who, when I'm not playing as Adam or Rocky, is actually my favorite character to play as because she's the only one that has a bit of a combo of sorts. Her slap is technically a 2-hit combo. It doesn't do that much considering 2 hits will just kill most of your basic mooks, but it's there. And she does lose it when she becomes a Power Ranger. Also, she looks a lot more like an anime character for some reason. Her eye is a lot more expressive. Though on the whole, I think the sprites do a better job of convening the way the characters look in the series. More so than even the first game. Because while the first game, the sprites, you could tell who they were supposed to be. The biggest identifiers were what they were wearing because, honestly, I can only remember maybe one time that the original 5 Rangers ever wore something different. Until Tommy came around. And even then, I still recall him wearing most of the same stuff. That was one of the things I always found a bit odd about every Power Ranger series, is the fact that they only really ever seem to have one outfit. Now, I can understand that in, like, Operation Overdrive. SPD, where they're supposed to be a police force and thus have a police uniform. And, I guess to an extent, Mystic Force. But say, like, as much as I hate to harp on this series more than I already do, why do the Mega Force Rangers need to always wear, like, their proclaimed color? Why don't they have more in their wardrobe? Be like, what was the book series I read as a kid? Jigsaw Jones? Where there was that one character that only ever wore one color each day of the week. I think that was the description. It's been a while since I read those books. I probably also have the name wrong, because Jigsaw Jones, isn't that the guy from the Saw series? I forget. Though admittedly, them always wearing the same color led to one of my favorite jokes in Dino Thunder. After Tommy became the Black Ranger, he went to everyone, "Alright, I need to go shopping. My closet's missing a lot of black." Dino Thunder actually got some pretty funny jokes and like that. It's not the funniest in the series. What is actually the funniest Power Ranger series in my eyes? It's probably either Mystic Force, or as much as I don't like the series on the whole, RPM probably. Because RPM had a lot of just joking humor. This stage, though, I know I've been talking for like 2.5 minutes, but I haven't talked much about the stage. The stage isn't very interesting. You can blow up those things, and that's about it. You know, as much as I can understand them not making new sprites for every individual ranger, you think they would have at least made slight alterations to the sprite to have a skirt for the girls? But oh well. Either way, time for this stage's mini-boss. This thing. I don't know what this thing is, but I guess it's like part of the train? I'd assume maybe part of the engine. And this thing actually has a good amount of text. The circle can either the center can either send out powers, fire either going left or right, fire waves going in all directions around it, and then the two things directly to the left and right of me can also shoot out fire when you see steam coming out from them. Basically, it's pattern recognition, the boss fight. But it's actually not that bad. I actually kind of like this fight. It's a bit hard to time at first because it's a bit odd about how long the attacks take to start. But overall, not very bad. Though I still take some cheap hits every now and then because I'm just not paying attention. And with that, we're moving on to the second half of the stage, which we go from the Final Fantasy VII Stop the Train mission to that first part when you're in Mount Corel. By that I mean we're going to be walking on train tracks for the rest of the part. Oh boy. And we also start to get the newest type of putty here, who's technically, well actually no, the newest too. These brown guys, which are basically the ones that would jump away from you earlier just with 2 hits. And the ones with swords, which I think take 3 hits. It doesn't really matter to me either way because that's not that much. But it can be annoying. Plus, I think they have more range than most of the other ones, as you would expect. This part of the stage does have another gimmick, though. Since we're going to be on the train tracks, there's going to be minecarts. And the minecarts are pretty simple. They come towards you, or they go away from you. Very simple. And they can also actually destroy enemies if they're in the path, so keep that in mind. Also, what are these things I was just kicking? What are those supposed to be? I mean, I know I shouldn't be questioning a Power Rangers game too hard, like, oh, what do you mean? You don't recognize that one thing from that one episode of Season 3 that was on screen for like 20 seconds? But come on, guys. I might be a nerd, but even I have my limits. Oh boy. You really do want to grab as many lightning bolts as you can, because having max power, even when you're in ranger form, is really good, because that extended range, and I think even power that the weapons have, is very worth it, and that bomb attack is very good against boss fights. Also, I like the concept of a putty just using a damn, I guess that would be a musket, technically. And because that just makes me laugh thinking about them going, and then shooting them. I'm tired because I actually just did that, didn't I? Huh. Either way, Kimberly's actually my least favorite ranger in this particular game because her bow is back and it has range to it, but it's just not really worth using. It's even against this stage's boss, Magnet Brain. Magnet Brain likes to send you away from him and then send these tornadoes at you. These tornadoes, by the way, are a lot slower on hard mode for some reason. I don't know if that makes it harder or easier. He can also do an uppercut attack against you, which will send you into the other plane, which you can do the same against him with your uppercut. But that's about it, actually. Not a very hard fight. In fact, he's more annoying than anything just because of the fact he constantly sends you away from him. Yeah, and he can also just do a basic stab attack. I always remember this guy, though, because when my friend Jordan and I watched Die Ranger, there were two villains in particular that just kind of stuck with us, just due to how ridiculous they were. This guy and the Key Jester. Key Jester just because he overacted beyond belief and it was so fun. And this guy because his laugh was very peculiar. It wasn't like the generic villain laugh, it was shock, 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 shock. And I don't know why, that always just stuck with me. Die Ranger on the whole, as I've said several times by this point, even in like, what, the 5 videos of Power Rangers have done alone, it's that kind of silly that you love. Even more so than Power Rangers was at the start of it. Though that was something I didn't like too much about Power Rangers towards, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s. They started to get a bit too serious with it, but don't get me wrong, I like the more serious storylines. But they got a bit too serious, if you catch my drift. Like, I immediately think of some parts of In Space, even though I actually like In Space's plot. Minor sections of Lost Galaxy, particularly towards the end with Trakina. And basically all of Time Force, even though I actually really, really like Time Force. Because Power Rangers, I can understand that trying to have a serious plot, but at the end of the day, you're still just a bunch of guys in spandex punching things. Either way, for Stage 5, we're bringing in the Red Ranger once again. And this is my favorite song in the game. I love this song to death. And our new Red Ranger, since Jason left due to contract disputes, is Rocky, played by Steve Cardenas. I think that's how I'm pronounced. I think it's how it's pronounced. And similar to some of the other actors we've covered on this, most of his stuff is just Power Rangers. He started off, I think, in the Alpha's Christmas special. And then he continued to be in the series as the Mighty Morphin Red, then Zeo, and the first Turbo Blue. Though, actually, I'm looking at his IMDb page right now. He's apparently in pre-production for 2 things. Brothers Badge coming out later this year, and Liquid Metal, which is some video game coming out next year. I am not familiar with that. I'm going to look that up. Either way, this stage I actually find really annoying, at least in this early section, because there's a lot of things trying to hurt you. Be it putty soldiers in that roof, or lasers on the ground. However, getting your power-ups here is actually very easy because the robots here almost always drop the large lightning bolts, which gets you a very good way through your power meter by the time you finish this section, if you go after every single one of them. I think they can also drop food every now and then, but it's not... you're going after them for the large lightning bolts. They can also drop the small ones, but that's rare. And now we have a random armored vehicle. This thing actually has a couple of attacks. Basically, the way it works is that there are 4 cannons on it, and the front 2 aim towards the column they're on, and I think the 2 in the back aim towards the opposite, but I'm not entirely sure about that, because more often than not, this thing never gets more than 1 or 2 of those attacks off. It also has a charge attack, but that's fairly worthless in the end of the day. I love this song. I really do. I do recommend you go and look up the... Oh, first off, that was I think a meat of some sort, but that's actually a much higher recovery than anything else in the game. Also, Random Ninja, there's only 2 of them in the game, and they're in this stage, which is odd. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, that's right. The soundtrack of this game, I really do recommend looking it up, even more so than I recommend looking up the first game's soundtrack, because while the first game's soundtrack just sounds heroic, this game's soundtrack not only is just better composed and has a better sound font, but it just fits the franchise a lot more in my eyes. Plus, it has a much better rendition of the main theme. I still think the worst Power Rangers game soundtrack is either one of the ones on the Game Boy Advanced, or some songs in the Genesis version of this game, because the sound font is just really ear-grating. Well, hi there, random scientist guys who look more like the main villain of the game than anything else. This part of the stage, the way it works, as you can probably guess, is that if you stand on the red and yellow flashing floors, you take damage. So don't do that. And as I mentioned earlier, when we were playing as Adam, Rocky also has a dropkick as his jump attack. So whenever I'm playing the game, I'm usually either playing as him or Rocky. Though for some reason, I always tend to go into the final boss as one particular character. And I don't know why, because even though he was, as we'll get into next part, the main character sort of for the series for a while, I never found him that interesting in the Mighty Morphin and even part of the Zeo days. And that's a thing I don't really use much. When you morph, the flash that happens at the end of it actually damages enemies. Not enough to really warrant being used as a way to kill enemies, but it's there. I always remember liking Rocky more than Jason, though. I don't exactly know why. Maybe it's because, even though Jason had the pretty interesting rivalry with the 6th Ranger, I think it's just because Rocky had something about his character that I liked. I think it's because he was a lot more realistic of a teenager, I guess. Because let's be honest, as much as a lot of us love Jason, he didn't act much like a teenager most of the time. Whereas I recall Rocky acting a lot more like a normal teenager, at least. I still remember actually coming home after probably 3rd grade. No, actually, no, 4th grade. Turning on Jetix and just watching episodes of SPD, though. It takes me back. And I actually recently learned that's actually a bit of a repeat for my family, because my brother used to do the same for the original series in Zeo. He would come home from school, grab whatever ice cream was in the freezer, and just eat ice cream right out of the container while watching Power Rangers. And I just find that hilarious. Speaking of Power Rangers, though, mind you, I know that's on top because of the game. The first trailer for the movie actually just came out about a week ago. And I like what it's showing so far. I think it could be a bit more colorful in terms of palette, but I get that they're trying to make it be a bit more serious than the original show did. Because I got a mix of Chronicle and Breakfast Club from it. And as long as they can actually keep the tone serious but not too serious, I think it can actually be a really good movie. And I'm looking forward to see what Bill Hader as Alpha is going to be like. That'll be weird. I just have to hope he can nail the right aye. And Bryan Cranston as Zordon will be interesting. I'll probably never be able to watch the original Zordon and take him seriously again, just based off how badass Bryan Cranston is on his own. That voice, man, I'll tell you. And now we're suddenly in a bridge. Okay then. Big Apple 3 a.m. This section of the stage I actually really don't like, because say if you're trying to get your power meter up, you can accidentally knock lightning bolts off the stage at certain higher altitudes, and you can fall off and thus have to reclimb a section of the stage later on, which is just not very good. I will admit, more so than the first Power Rangers game, there is a bit more of a difficulty curve here. I still say all of the stages are fairly close in difficulty to one another, but more so than at least the first one, there is a difficulty curve. Especially in terms of the boss fights, because I actually really like the boss fights in this game and the way they're designed. Because in the first Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game, they were simple, and they could still hurt, don't get me wrong. But they never really got harder. The only one that was really harder than the rest was probably Cyclopsis. And even then, that could also possibly be because you had a new gameplay style for that entire area. Now, what's one game I need to play, though? And I've only need to play just so I can, because I've heard things about it. The original Genesis Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game. I've heard that that is... at best. And I've heard the soundtrack, and oh, that's bad. Mind you, ruining the Ron Wasserman theme is just never a good thing. That's one thing I really hope the movie does not screw up. Though I only recently learned, actually, that Ron Wasserman did a version of the Mystic Force opening for Disney. And I listened to it, and I actually really like it. I do prefer the original Mystic Force opening, just because I've listened to it for so long, but the Wasserman's really badass. And for getting powered up with Rocky, we get the Power Sword, obviously. It has range. And it's useful against this guy, I suppose. Next boss is one of the more memorable monsters in my eyes. Silverhorns. This guy was actually in the third Power Rangers game on the Super Nintendo. First off, he always starts off with that electric fist move. The way this guy works is that every few hits, he'll do that lightning thing, which means he's basically invulnerable for a bit. At which points... you just have to not run into him. He'll shoot these balls into the air, which I think fall to the ground and explode, but for the most part, you're going to want to jump over him, because you actually cannot send him backwards too far. Think of it similarly to the box robot fight from Metroid Fusion. You need to jump over him in order to get around him. He also has that laser attack, but I rarely ever see him do that. I think he uses it more in hard mode, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And I actually remember that I found this guy's role in Die Ranger really odd, because he was just a guard for this one really annoying kid character. I think his name was Koromaru. And I did not like Koromaru, because I predicted his big identity thing way early on, and I was not too pleased with that. Also, I'm doing a backflip. I rarely ever use that in the actual stages. It's basically like Richter Belmont from Rondo of Blood. By pressing down on the jump button, you can do a little dodge attack. It's very simple. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we'll be heading on to the final stages and meeting the big movie tie-in character. Wink. See you guys then.